All right, welcome back. We're going to continue on with the same network that we had in the last video, and this time we're going to start looking at the switches and how we do basic configuration changes on the switches. Now, as you can see in this diagram, I actually have two switches here. These are 2950T24 switches. I have two different networks here. I have the 192.168.1.0 network and the 192.168.2.0 network. The 192.168.1.1 is my default gateway for this network, and 192.168.2.1 is my default gateway for this network. So let's start with the switch over here on the left. I'm going to go ahead and click on that switch, and just like with a router, you get the visual representation of the switch, and you have the CLI tab here at the top. You go ahead and just hit enter, and you'll enter the switch just like you would a router. Now, if you'll notice, the first thing that you'll notice on a switch is the word switch. On a router, the default is router. On a switch, the default is switch. The way you enter into the switch is very similar to the way you enter a router. It's exactly the same. You hit enter, and you get put into what we call user mode. Again, you can hit the question mark. The commands there are what the commands are. These are the commands that you can use in user mode. The commands are a little different. There are some things that are different between the commands that you use on routers and the command you can use on a switch because they are different devices. But the way you get into enable mode is the same. You just type in EN and hit enter, and then you're in enable mode. And also for a switch, you have to do configurations in the configuration mode, just like you would do with the router. So we have to type in config T. So I'm in config T. Or I'm in global configuration mode. Now I can start setting my things like host name. I can set the IP address on the switch, those kind of things. So let's start with the easy one, host name. Just like with the router, I can hit H, hit tab, and I get my host name command for me. I'm going to name this one. We're going to name this one S1 for switch 1. That way it makes it easier for me to remember which one. I actually make it SW1 for switch 1. So I'm going to change my host name, and there we go. I changed my host name. Let's go ahead and do a do write, WR, and let's do a do show run so we can kind of see what the difference is here. So my host name there at the top has been set, so I can see that. Now looking down on this device, I can see I have a bunch of interfaces. Unlike a router, which only may have a few interfaces, maybe 2 interfaces or 3 or 4, a switch typically has 24, 26, 48 interfaces. Now, all of these interfaces are not like a router. A router interface operates in a certain way where you can set an IP address and you can make it a default gateway of a network. Switch interfaces, at least layer 2 switch interfaces, don't operate that way. Those switch interfaces are just to connect to computers to. However, there is an interface on a switch that you can set an IP address on, and that is the Vlan One interface. And you can see this right here as the Vlan One interface. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. Let's go back to our basic configuration that we were doing like we did on our router. We're going to go ahead and configure the message of the day. We're going to configure our linecon 0 password, our enable secret password. I'm not going to do the enable password this time because the enable password, you don't use it in the real world. You only use the enable secret password. So we're just going to stick with that one for now from all our devices from here on out. So let's go in and set our, let's do our linecon 0 password first. Linecon 0, I have to go into the linecon 0 mode. I'm going to set my password to Cisco, and I'm going to type in login. So I have to type in the login keyword. So there I have my password set. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and do my enable password. Now, just like a router, you can only configure items in the current configuration mode that are available. So let me get the question mark and see if my enable is a command that I can use in this mode, and it is not, which means I cannot set the enable password from here. I have to go back to global configuration mode. Now I'm in line configuration mode, so all I have to do is type in exit, and now I'm back in global configuration mode. I hit the question mark, and I can see there is my enable command that I'm looking for. So now I can set my enable secret password. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to type in enable secret, and I'm going to type in the word Cisco. So now I have my enable secret password. I have my linecon 0 password. I also want to be able to encrypt my passwords. The console password will be unencrypted by default. So I'm going to use that service password encryption command to encrypt all my passwords. The next thing I want to do is I want to set my banner. So I'm going to type in banner, MOTD. I'm going to hit the pound, and I'm going to say stay out of my switch. And I'm going to end it with another pound, and hit enter. So now I have my message of the day set, I have my host name set, and I have my password set on my switch. Let me go ahead and do a do right. I'm going to end out of this. I'm going to exit, and I'm going to go back in and make sure that that stuff is set correctly. Again, here's my message of the day, stay out of my switch. I'm going to type in my password Cisco. Okay, I can see that my host name is still set to S1. I'm going to type in enable, password Cisco, and I'm back in my router. So now I know that the commands that I just did have taken effect. One more thing that I need to do on a basic router configuration switch is I have to set the password on Vlan 1, or set the IP address on Vlan 1. Vlan 1 is an interface, a management interface of a switch. So the management interface is important because as you start to build out your network in the real world environment, you're not going to be able just to walk up to a switch anytime you want to configure it. You're going to want to configure it over the network using a protocol such as SSH. In order to do that, you have to have an IP address set on Vlan 1. So we're going to do that now. We're going to set our IP address on Vlan 1, and I'll show you how to do that. We're just going to type in config t. Vlan 1 is an interface just like any other interface. You just type in interface, but then you type in Vlan 1. No space between the word Vlan and 1. It all goes together, and you hit enter. And now I'm in interface configuration mode for Vlan 1. Now, the one that I'm configuring right now is this switch over here, which is on the 192.168.1.0 network. I set my router to be 1.1. I set my PC to be 1.10. Normally, in a network like this, I would set the switch to be 1.2. So I'm going to type in, just like on the router, IP address 192.168.1.2, 255.255.255.0. Now, just like an interface on a router, a VLAN interface has to be no-shut in order for it to work. So I'm going to type in the no-shut command. And now the interface has been brought up. As you can see it right here, it says my interface Vlan 1 has been brought up, and now it's active. I can test to see that it's active by doing a ping. So let's do a do right first. Let's fade our configuration. Let's do end to get back to the privilege exec mode. And I'm going to do a ping 192.168.1.1, and I'm going to try to ping my gateway. And I was successful. Now, you'll notice that the very first, and when you look at the ping on a Cisco device, the pings, these little exclamation points, are what make the ping successful. A period means it was not successful. On a switch, the first ping to a device is always going to be unsuccessful. And the reason for that is because the Cisco switch, the way it works, is it has to learn where to send the layer 2 packet. And we'll get into more detail about how that works later. But just know for now that the very first one, maybe even the second one, will fail, and then you'll get success. And if you do the ping again by doing the up arrow, they should all be successful. Now I'm able to ping up to the router. Now, if I want to ping from this switch to the other side of the network, remember now we have two sides to our network. We have we're right here in this switch, and there's two sides to this network. So I'm going to try to ping from this switch over to this computer 192.168.2.10. And let's see what happens. So I'm going to type in ping. I'm going to do up arrow actually, and I'm going to change it to 2.10. And what happens is I'm going to probably get no response. The reason for that is because I have not told the switch where to go if it needs to get to another network. And the way you do that is you set a default route or a default gateway. Any device, whether it be a computer or a switch, needs a default gateway to get to another network. On the computer, we set the default gateway. We have to do the same thing on the switch. So I'm going to go back into configuration mode, config T, and I'm going to type in IP and then the question mark. And if you look up here, the second one down is the default gateway. You set the default gateway for a device in global configuration mode, not in interface configuration mode. If you try to set the default gateway on Vlan 1, it will not work. You have to do it inside of global configuration mode. So I'm going to type in IP and then def tab, and I get IP default gateway. Get the question mark. What it wants now is just the IP address of the default gateway, which in this case is 192.168.1.1. And I hit enter, and there we go. I got my default gateway set. So let's do a do right, and we'll do an end, and then we'll go into our do our ping again and see if I can get to the other computer now. And I have success. So now that I've told the switch where to go to get to the other network, which is the router, because routers separate networks. In order to get from one network to the other, I have to go through the router. I've told the switch where the router is. It's at 192.168.1.1, and now the switch knows how to get over to the router. Okay, now that's the basic configuration of that switch. I've done the basics. I've got the IP address set on the switch. I've got the host name set on the switch. I did the passwords, both the line con 0 and the enable secret and the message of the day. Now, I need to go over and I need to configure my switch 2. I need to configure that environment. Now, there is an easier way to configure a switch when you start doing multiple switches over and over and over, and I'm going to show you that right now. It is a very easy way to do it, but you have to be careful when you do this because it can be a little bit tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a text document. I'm just going to open up a basic text document. You can open up a notepad, however you want to do it, and then I'm going to come back over to my router, or my switch. And I'm going to do a show run. And I'm going to go ahead and go through the whole. Let the whole thing go, and I'm going to come here, go to the end. And I'm going to go and I'm going to copy from the very top, which is where we have, let's see, right where it says, right below building configuration. It says building configuration current. I'm going to grab underneath that and right there. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to put it over here in my document. Now, I'm going to take some stuff out because I'm only caring about certain commands. Now these are the actual commands as they get put into the router. I'm going to take out these two here at the top, the no service timestamps. I don't need those. I do want this one because this service password encryption is a command that I entered on my switch for the configuration. I'm going to change the host name from SW1 to SW2. I'm going to leave the enable secret because that is the enable secret password that I set. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of these interfaces because I don't need those. They're not going to be part of my basic configuration. I'm going to get rid of those. I'm going to go ahead and leave this interface VLAN 1, but I'm going to change the IP address from 1.2 to 2.2. Now, one thing that you have to remember when you're doing this is the VLAN 1, and just like any other interface, you have to issue the no shut command in order to turn an interface on. By default, or not by default, the no shut command will not show up in a running config. The shutdown command will, so if its interface is shut down, you will see the shutdown command, but the no shut will not be there. So in order for this to work properly, what I'll have to do is add another line in here that says no shut. I'm going to change my default gateway to 2.1. I'm going to leave my message banner of the day. I'm going to leave my line con password because I want to set that, and I'm going to get rid of these because I don't need those. So now I have a very small configuration file that I have created with the things that I want to set on my switch. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to go edit, copy. Now I'm going to come back over here to I'm going to go over to switch 2, and I'm going to go ahead and log into that. I'm going to get into that one. So I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to go ahead and go into enable mode. I'm going to go into config T mode. Okay, so I'm in config mode, and from config mode, now again, you have to be in config mode to do this. If you are in if you are in user mode or exec mode, this will not work. You have to be in config mode because you're making configuration changes to the device. So make sure before you click paste that you are in config mode. Once I'm in config mode, I have my cursor blinking. I'm just going to go over here and push the paste button, and boom. All of the configuration commands that I put in that document are input into the router automatically. I don't have to go and type each line in individually. Now this is important because if I have to configure multiple devices in my network, it's much easier for me to create a document and just change the parameters that I want to change, like the IP address, the default gateway, and then I can go from device to device, configuring it one by one much quicker than I can do as if I typed it in individually. Now, my device has changed. I can see that my host name has been changed to SW2. I can actually do a show run, and I can look at my device and see that my enable secret has been set, my VLAN address has been set, my IP default gateway has been set, my banner message of the day has been set. All of these things have been set for me. So my switch is already ready to go, and all I had to do is make a few changes in a text document, cut and paste this over into the switch, and now I'm good to go. Now, just remember that you have to still do a write because you have to save it. But now my switch should be running and everything should be working properly. So let me try that. Let me try to ping my default gateway for this side of the network, which would be 2.1. I hit enter and I should get success. Let me try to ping the PC on the other side of the network, 1.10. And I have success. So I just showed you how you can very easily configure multiple like devices that have very similar configurations, where you just have to change maybe the IP address or the default gateway address, and you can leave you want everything else to be the same. It makes like a little cookie cutter. You can just go from device to device, configuring the devices by copying, pasting that information in there. Again, just be careful. You have to be in configuration mode to do it, and make sure that when you make those changes, you're aware of the changes that you're making, because if you take the same IP and put it on multiple devices in your network, that's going to cause problems, and you don't want to do that. So those are some of the basic configuration setups for a switch. And now we have a little bit of a working network here with 2 switches that are configured, 2 PCs, and a router.